we are going to, I'm going to, that's so funny, go through the cellular reproduction slides. And I tend to, I don't know why I sound like a robot on most of these videos, so if I do, I'm so sorry. I do have like a professional microphone, and I don't know why it's not working, but whatever. You guys can deal with it, right? So I'm just going to go through the slides. Hopefully this helps you. If it doesn't, I'm so sorry, but I'm hoping it will. So the first part, we're going to go over how our genetic information prepares for cell division. And when I say genetic information, I am talking about our DNA. Okay, so this is how our DNA prepares for the cell to divide. Now, most of the time in our cells, your DNA kind of looks like a bowl of spaghetti. That is called chromatin. It is just loose DNA, it's just hanging out, right? Because your DNA is constantly going through transcription, and your DNA has to be loose in order for transcription to happen. So really, that picture is very accurate. Your nucleus is jam-packed with all this loose DNA all over the place so that the DNA can be constantly read and turned into mRNA to make proteins. But before the DNA or before your cell divides, it's really hard to replicate all of that chromatin and then separate it equally. So what your cell does is it packs it. It's kind of like your DNA is going on a trip when the cell divides. So we need to pack that chromatin into suitcases so that it's easy to divide everything up when the cell divides. So the chromatin is going to start wrapping around these proteins, and it's going to start wrapping around itself until it makes a really condensed structure called a chromosome. Now humans, we have 46 chromosomes, but we usually refer to them as the 23 pairs. So if you look at this picture up top, this is called a karyotype. This is just a picture of all of your chromosomes. You have 2 chromosomes of chromosome 1. So you got one of those from mom, one of those from dad. You have 2 chromosome 2s, 2 chromosome 3s, so on and so forth. The first 22 on this picture are called autosomes because they code for things all over your body, like your hair color, your eye color, your skin color. If you have any traits about you, it's on the autosomes. The last pair that is in the gray-blue box, that is your sex chromosomes. Those are going to determine your sex. So if you are XX, your sex is female. If you are XY, your sex is male. Now, there are different genetic disorders that can give you multiple X's and Y's. I don't know if we're going to get to those, but there are a lot of genetic disorders that come along with the sex chromosomes, but normally you only have the 2 and those determine what your sex is. And those usually don't have a whole lot of normal body traits coded for on them. Now, before your cell divides, since we need to get all of that same information that you have in your cell normally into the new cell, all 46 chromosomes have to be replicated so that before your cell divides, you actually have it jam-packed with 2 full sets, so that makes 92 total chromosomes in your cell before it divides. So you're actually going to have 4 copies of chromosome 1, 4 copies of chromosome 2. You actually have 4 sex chromosomes in your cell before it divides. Now each chromosome, you guys seem to get this down with, at least the people who worked with me, you seem to have this down. There are some parts to it. So each side of the chromosome is actually called a sister chromatid. So the yellow portion on this diagram, that would be like the normal chromosome that you have in your cell before it's getting ready to divide. But then when your cell's getting ready to divide, it replicates that chromosome. So it's like identical, It's an identical chromosome, and they come together and they kind of form a bond at the center that's called your centromere. So you can kind of think of it like identical twins that are attached at the hip, okay? Each of those sister chromatids is identical. There's nothing different about them. We're going to go over a couple different types of cells. These are some pretty important vocab words. So the first one, and we've talked about this one before, is called a somatic cell. These are your body cells, so like your skin cells, your stomach cells, the cells that line your intestine. Those are all somatic cells, and these are all diploid. The prefix di means two, so diploid cells have two of each chromosome. So we represent a chromosome with the letter N. So a 2N means that you have two of each chromosome. So that's how we are going to refer to diploid cells. We call them 2N because they have two of each chromosome. One is from mom, one is from dad. The other type of cell is called a gamete, and these are your sex cells. So in females, we have eggs, and in males, you have sperm. These are also known as gametes, which is what I will be calling them from now on. And these are haploid. So haploid means you only have one of each chromosome. So therefore, we reference haploid as N. There's only one of chromosome 1 and one of chromosome 2. So you basically have half the genetic information you need to make a human. Hence why it takes two people to make a human. So the next portion is talking about the cell cycle. Now, the cell cycle starts with interphase. So interphase, a lot of the time, gets confused with mitosis. Interphase and mitosis are separate. Interphase is not one of the stages of mitosis. Interphase happens before mitosis, and it happens after cytokinesis, but it is completely separate. This is the longest stage of the cell cycle, and there are some cells that actually stay in interphase forever. And we are going to talk about the different parts of interphase, but all of those different parts together are called interphase. So the first part is called the G1 phase, also known as gap 1 or the first growth phase. And this is where a cell was just it's born from cytokinesis. So it's nice and small, and it's like a little baby, and the cell is going to grow to full size during G1. So you can kind of think of G1 as like adolescence for humans, right? You go from a baby and you grow to full size through adolescence, which is like what happens in G1. The next part of interphase is called the S phase or synthesis phase, and this is where the DNA replicates. So this is where your cells start preparing themselves to go through replication or to go through division. So this is where we go from having 46 chromosomes to 92. And then last part of interphase is going to be the G2 phase, also known as gap 2 or the second growth phase. And this is where the cell is really preparing for cell division by doubling all of the organelles. There's a little bit of growth because as you're increasing the number of organelles and the amount of cytosol, obviously your cell's going to have to expand a little bit, but really it's just kind of preparing itself to go through mitosis. And if we actually wanted to make another analogy, right, if G1 is kind of like you going through adolescence, the S phase, let's say that's kind of like when you get your first job. Before you're going to have a baby, right, you need to kind of double your financials. You have to be financially prepared to have a baby. So you can think of S phase where we double the DNA as like you working so that you can get money in order to start preparing to have a baby. And then G2 would then be where you start gathering all the things it takes to have a baby and kind of planning out the whole process of making a baby. So then the mitotic phase would be when you are creating the baby in your tummy. So that is made up of actually two different stages. So the mitotic phase is the purple and pink part together. Otherwise, you can see in the center of that circle, there's a yellow triangle. That is the mitotic phase, and is actually split into two different stages inside of it. So we have mitosis, which is prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, and then separate from those is cytokinesis. So another big misconception is that cytokinesis is actually one of the steps of mitosis, and it's not. It's completely separate. But mitosis and cytokinesis together make up the mitotic phase, just like how G1, S, and G2 make up interphase. I'm going to stop the video here and I'll make another one for mitosis so that you don't have to listen to my voice for 45 minutes straight.